Joining us on the line is Bret Baier, the host of Special Report on Fox News. But you know, these days he has a nickname.
His dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino, if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
Yeah. Do you know what we're talking about, Bret Baier? Of course, if you didn't see Bret Baier's interview last night, which I would describe as jaw-dropping, we're going to give you a little clip of that, and we want to get Bret away. And how are you this morning, Bret?
I'm doing good.
All right, so there was this interview you had with Tommy Vietor, who is the NSC spokesman. Yeah, back in the day, he was the NSC spokesman when all of this was going on with Benghazi. And you had some questions about how these talking points were edited. Here is just a little clip of how that conversation went last night.
Did you also change attacks to demonstrations in the talking points?
Maybe. I don't really remember.
You don't remember?
Dude, this was like 2 years ago. We're still talking about the most mundane
it is the
process
thing that everybody is talking about.
Bret, there were two things about that sort of caught my eye. Number one, he doesn't remember. You know, these talking points were called into question moments after they were delivered by Susan Rice. So it seemed like that would pretty much be seared in your brain, what your involvement was in those talking points. And the second thing is, how did you prevent yourself from reaching around and trying to slap that smarmy smile off that guy's face?
Yeah. Listen, I give Tommy Vietor credit for coming on. And I told him that at the end of the interview. I said I appreciated it. There are many questions about this. And obviously, the fact that this email from Ben Rhodes that we've talked about, that talks about the video, it took a judge and a FOIA request to release that. A year later, after it had already been requested, is why this story came back up. There are many holes in the story, and Tommy Vietor was NSC spokesman. He was in the Situation Room the night of 9/11, 2012. He was integral to this. He's one of the guys that briefed Susan Rice before she went on those Sunday talk shows. So that's why I wanted to talk to him. Just to give it context, the White House continues to say that the CIA talking points were the way that Susan Rice was going to talk about Benghazi, but this email that came from the White House staff was about other protests around the region. It was not about Benghazi when it references the video. That's a little surreal in making that case, that briefing memo was not about Benghazi. So I was trying to get to the CIA talking points, and if he had changed any of those things in the talking points, it went through his office, the Public Affairs Office. And when we got into the details, he remembered some, and then the clip you heard, he did not remember changing attack to demonstrations. Someone did.
Bret, I want to commend you. I truly think it was a shining moment, this interview, and I stayed and watched. I had my 5 o'clock show, and I usually don't, but I stuck around because I wanted to see how Special Report was going to cover the day's events, and I'm so glad I did. I got to ask you a couple of behind-the-scenes questions. First of all, that was a live interview. That wasn't pre-taped.
It was live, yeah.
And because you seemed so incredibly prepared, and so did your control room. I mean, the way you went to cuts, it was almost like it was effortless from his response. You had the immediate response to him via video and via audio. So, I mean...
Yeah, well, so here's how, on these kinds of interviews, I prepare. I set up things that I know I want to ask about in general. And then I think about where the person may go. And I give my staff, and my staff is fantastic, a whole list of things. I mean, a sheet full of elements that I could potentially call for if we go down a certain road of questioning. And they're really good. They have everything on ready to go. So if we start talking about Mike Morrell testifying on the Hill, they're ready with that soundbite.
They got that queued up ready to go.
That was great.
Well, okay, there was other news that came out of this interview because, he was in the briefing room that night.
The Situation Room.
I'm saying briefing room. It's the Situation Room. Thank you for correcting me. He was in the Situation Room that night, and you asked him about the president and where the president was.
So then when Hillary Clinton talks to him by phone at 10 p.m., he's where?
I don't know. I don't have a tracking device on him in the residence.
And he went on to say that he was indeed in the Situation Room and he never saw the president there.
Yeah, Vietor was in the Situation Room all night, and the president was not in there. And that's just the first that we've heard that he was not in the Situation Room. For some reason, I think we are starting to know why. The White House has never said where the president was. We know he talked on the phone to Prime Minister Netanyahu at 7 o'clock. We know they say he was briefed throughout the night, and then he talked on the phone to Hillary Clinton at 10 o'clock. But Vietor says he was not in the Situation Room. Now, can a president handle a crisis other places in the White House? A crisis? Of course. Of course they can. But the Situation Room is the place. Of course, it's the place where that photograph is of the president and his staff on the bin Laden raid,
yes,
looking at live feeds. That's the place where all the communication and intelligence comes into. And usually, when stuff is hitting the fan, that's usually where you find the top officials.
Well, it seems we're getting a picture here that they didn't understand in real time the enormity of the attack against our consulate, and that they certainly did not take the actions that they should have to try to help those people who were being attacked.
Yeah, I think that's where the questions are going. I mean, this General Lovell, who was the intelligence deputy commander of AFRICOM, he was monitoring real time in Germany. He testified yesterday that the State Department was essentially in charge, and that they did not move anything. They wanted to give deference to the Libyans to handle the attack, and they did not try to move anything. Now, we didn't know, General Lovell testified, how long this attack would go. And there are other reports, the ARB, remember the review that says that the military was not in a position to respond. That may be the case, but General Lovell is testifying that they didn't try.
Bret Baier, based on the response that I saw on social media, and I know that you follow Twitter as well, and you probably saw it too, I think a lot of Americans share in a frustration here that despite the fact that some things came out of this interview, there were a whole lot of questions that Tommy Vietor really just would not give an answer to. And as a journalist who knows this story so well, and you made a point, by the way, of saying other news agencies are now starting to ask the questions that Fox News and a handful of others have been asking for quite some time. What are the key things you would like answered here that you still haven't gotten answers to?
Well, I think first this week, why did it take so long for this other element to come out of the White House? Why did it take a judge and a FOIA request to get this email that says, that they were briefing Susan Rice about a video when they knew, according to the CIA station chief on the ground, military, that this was a full-scale military-style terrorist attack. And they knew it in the early hours. In fact, the CIA station chief essentially was making target lists for potential people in Ansar al-Sharia, the terrorist group, in the early hours. So why? Why does the president go out to the United Nations on September 25th, 2 weeks later, and give a speech tied to the video? Why does Hillary Clinton first put out that statement on 9/11 at 10 p.m. while the attack's still going on, blaming the video?
If I could add one why there, it's to the one that still drives me crazy. Why did the president think the most important thing he should do on the morning after the attacks was go to Las Vegas and hold a fundraiser?
Yeah, and there's also the why of why this place was so unprotected, and why was Ambassador Stevens there in the first place.
Well, we could talk about another hour, but we got to go. Bret, thank you so much.
Let me just tease one thing. We've got a special on this, laying it all out, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. One of the problems with Benghazi is it gets muddied. People glaze over. They forget the context. So we have it tonight at 9 p.m., tomorrow at 10, and Sunday at 9.
All right, Bret Baier.